Michael Krobach took home the checkered flag after Scott Eckrich let him win last week in Las Vegas. All jokes aside, after being a front runner all night, Michael put all his chips into his short pit stop strategy, and he hit the jackpot. Tonight, we've gone eastbound and down from Las Vegas to Homestead Miami Speedway at the very bottom of Florida. Can Krobach go back-to-back, or does one of the other two championship competitors add another feather to their cap tonight? Join us here on the Virtual Group Network for the next round of the Pretty Good Racing League's premier series, the High, Wide, and Handsome 200, presented by The Joy of Driving from Homestead Miami Speedway. I'm Austin Belke, joined in the booth by J.R. Shepard and Kenny Kibbe, with our director Ryan Seneker in the production trailer. The track length and lap count are the exact same, but the track layout couldn't be more different from last week to this one. JR, what can you tell us about Homestead Miami Speedway?
Well, Austin, Homestead Miami Speedway is a 1.5 mile progressive banked oval where the turns are banked starting at 18 degrees on the bottom all the way up to 20 degrees on the top side. That progressive banking will provide these drivers with options to set up and complete passes on one another around here. However, the low line will probably be the preferred way around most of the time on this iRacing server. There is speed to be had for sure running the high line, especially in turns 3 and 4, but this track is extremely abrasive and will wear the tires out quickly. Due to this, the bottom line is going to be your best bet for conserving the tire wear, at least early. The races at this speedway usually have at least one green flag run, long green flag run, so you can expect the lap times to fall off quite a bit during that type of a run. The drivers that save their stuff the most will be around at the end making big gains. A few of the drivers that come to mind who are great at doing just that are Michael Krobach and Scott Eckrich. I expect these two to be part of the conversation all night long. And Austin, like I said earlier, these races tend to have at least one green flag run in them. That can lead to varying strategies and even some surprise front runners toward the end. But no matter what, Homestead always produces some of the best racing out there. Tonight should be fun to watch for sure, guys.
Thanks, JR. I'd like to take a quick moment here to talk to our Mahan Speed Laboratories You Finished Last Pull Award winner. Tonight, that's Woody Mahan. Woody, if you got a copy?
I'm here, boys.
That's what I like to hear. Well, Woody, seeming as this is your award, I feel like a lot of people are going to think this is rigged that you won it.
It is a total rigging, and I have no shame in saying that.
I like to hear it. So, I was right on that. I assumed it was rigged. Is there anything you can do to rig the outcome of tonight's race to make sure you're talking to us later in victory lane?
Jiminy, right now it's, can I get to the first pit stop? That's where I'm at right now, and if I can get to that first pit stop, I really feel I got a chance to get to the second pit stop. And once we get there, we might be able to make it to the finish line. We're struggling for a finish right now. It's real bad.
Well, you talk about it being real bad. Of course, Homestead Miami is, the track with all that progressive banking, so you're going to see a lot of guys running the fence. Do you have a lane strategy for tonight? You guys going to start down low and go up to the top, or are you just going to rim ride the whole night?
Well, it really is going to depend on how well you take care of your tires. It's going to be very, very rough on the right rear, so that's going to kind of define. We can run pretty hard here at the beginning, and everybody's going to be slip sliding around. My play is to hang out at the bottom and see if I can take care of everything.
Sounds like a plan, Woody. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. Hopefully we can talk to you again before the night's over.
Hey, Mahan Speed Laboratories, baby.
Thanks, Woody. That was Woody Mahan, winner of the Mahan Speed Laboratories You Finished Last Pull Award. He'll be rolling off tonight from the first position as we now get ready to go through the starting order for tonight's affair. Like we just mentioned, Woody's going to start on pole with James Moore to his outside, rolling off in second. Matthew Wheeler and Brian Yazik round out the second row. Brady Kerr is going to start inside the top 5 with John Wilco in 6th. Jacob Ruff rolls off in 7th, followed by Christopher DeWald, who starts in 8th. Jonathan Cogswell is followed by Rich Jetty. Those drivers round out the top 10, JR.
Yeah, starting in 11th place now we have Greg O'Berry. Alongside him in 12th is Jordan Harnish. Starting 13th tonight is Thomas George, your current points leader. Beside him in 14th is Michael Krobach, last week's winner. Starting 15th is Isaiah Dupre. 16th will be Mike Rasmus. Rolling off in 17th is Pete Baskins. Don Runkle Jr., he will be rolling off in 18th. And our last row will consist of Barrett Palamas in 19th and Scott Eckridge in 20th place.
Thanks, JR. As always, we like to mention here the starting lineup for this race is comprised of an inversion of the finishing positions from last race. Then you have the drivers that didn't show up last race and are tonight, that being guys like DRJ, Barrett Palamas, and of course after that, the last two champion winners in the 2 seasons previous start at the very back of the pack. Tonight, that just being Scott Eckridge, Jeff Ward not able to make the race. Kenny, talk us through some keys here really quick.
Yeah, so tonight, 200-mile affair, 134 laps, 8 total sets of tires, counting the ones they start on. Tires will definitely be a factor tonight, 75% fuel limit. Be about a 2-stop race tonight. Hug the white line, but you want to make sure that you conserve your tires no matter what line you run. Avoid getting sucked in by the wall if you do choose to go up high. You don't want to get sucked into that wall, damage the race car, and really lose the momentum. And of course, above all, manage your tires no matter what line you decide to run. High, low, middle, tire wear are going to be a huge factor tonight.
Thanks, Kenny. iRacing pace car pulls down pit road. Green flag flies to the air here tonight for the high, wide, and handsome 200, presented by the joy of driving from Homestead, Miami Speedway. Pole sitter Woody Mahan leads the field into turns 1 and 2. Look at James Moore. He did a really good job of sticking down on his door. Don't look now, but Brian Yazik coming up here in 3rd position, trying to look to the inside of James as they go down the backstretch.
Yeah, absolutely. Brian is looking for some redemption after last week's terrible run, being taken out in an accident. He's trying to get up front early and make the most of tonight's race.
Yeah, Brian Yazik, for those folks of you at home that didn't have the opportunity to watch us live last weekend, Brian Yazik was taken out in an unforced error by Thomas George, his championship rival and competitor just ahead of him. Nosed his car hard into the inside wall, then the outside wall, was forced to retire from that affair. Right now he's looking to make a comeback, strong comeback here on the bottom side of the racetrack. He's going to come up the track and just barely clear Woody Mahan, goes back down, thinks better of that forcing himself clear maneuver.
Yeah, definitely. Woody's fighting hard a little bit through there. He's decided to concede the lead. He's fighting for 2nd place now using that high line. He's been running that high line most of the race so far.
Jerry, you talked about these cars being treacherous before we started the broadcast. Talk us through what you have to do when that happens to these drivers. Are you kind of on pins and needles as you go through the first couple laps?
Absolutely. These cars are a little bit unpredictable as the tire pressures come up. Tire temperatures, more importantly, get up to that racing status that you need to have a more comfortable feeling. But yeah, the cars are a little bit tight. You can't really feel the front end getting into the corner, and then as you start to get on the throttle through the center and exit, the rear end wants to come around big time. We heard that from our pole winner tonight, Woody Mahan, talking about how much it's going to mean to save that right rear tire. That's what these guys are going to have to be working on. I expect to see a lot of comers and goers throughout this race.
James Moore takes a look down to the inside of Brian Yazik as they head into turns 1 and 2. They're side by side as they come off of turn 2 down the back straightaway. That's Moore on the inside in the 21 car. Brian Yazik on the top side in the 55. Just behind him is pole sitter Woody Mahan. And don't look now, that's Christopher Duwald in the 82 machine trying to see if he can't make a move here to the inside of Woody Mahan. And look at that as Jonathan Cogswell tries to make it 3 wide down the front straightaway. They're still side by side down the front stretch as they head to turn 1 for the lead.
Yeah, as we saw there with DeWald trying to make a pass on Woody Mahan, he had to check up to avoid contact. When he did, that allowed the guys behind him to really close up and almost make a pass on him. We continue to see some great racing down the back straightaway here, Austin.
Boy, that time coming off turn 2, Kenny, James got really loose. He touched the apron just a little bit, bobbled the car, had to go up the track and lost all of his momentum, and that allowed for him to pretty much get swamped here by Brian Yazik. That's why we saw that double change for the lead.
Yeah, it's quite treacherous if you really want to get down there and flirt with that apron, but you don't want to get all over it, and you see Moore trying to make that bottom line work once again. Luckily, he's got a draft in behind him to keep his momentum up to help him stay in this group, and you see how jumbled up the group still is. We're 6 laps into this thing, and no real separation between the top 10.
No separation. You could throw a big old blanket over these guys as they now come off at turn 4. Still not quite side by side for the lead, but after that they are quite Noah's Ark style as they go down the front stretch into turn 1 and 2. Big old bump there from Christopher DeWald to the rear end of Brian Yazik as the cars file in and out of turn 2 and go down the backstretch. Jonathan Cogswell takes a look to the outside of James Moore.
He's continuing to battle hard up front. This is what we talked about Homestead being able to do. You can run all over this track. You can make passes. You can run side by side. But these guys will wear their tires out eventually. The guys that I'm keeping an eye on right now, like I said earlier, are Michael Krobach and Scott Eckridge. Scott's running around back in 16th right now, guys. He's making no progress, and that's for a reason. He is saving his stuff.
And the last couple times going into the corners, I've seen Christopher DeWalt giving some pretty healthy pushes to Brian Yazik in the 55. I think Brian might have come over the radio. Is that something you want, or is that something you kind of would rather he didn't do for right now?
Well, I mean, as long as it's down the straightaway and it's nice and square, I don't think I would mind getting a push, I suppose. But, as long as it's nothing more than that. And it looks like this time he's actually, that's actually Harnish going for a move on Yazik. Looks like Yazik, though, against our point from just now, Austin, looks like Yazik maybe doesn't want those kinds of pushes, and he's kind of falling back through the field a bit.
Yeah, I think that getting on the radio is telling Christopher, hey, don't do that. It doesn't help me out. I'm going to wreck up here. I'm sure you don't want cars wrecking in front of you, JR.
No, absolutely not. And, if you're Brian Yazik after the run last weekend, you cannot afford to have any more incidents or things go awry for you. So he's definitely just wanting a clean race. He's wanting to fill things out and try to find a space that he can ride around in early in this race and then go run at the end.
Up at the front of the field, it's still Jonathan Cogswell, who has a 0.2 of a second lead over James Moore. Those two have about a half a second of a gap back to Jordan Harnish in third. He'll round out the podium with your championship. He was the leader as about 3 races ago, but Thomas George has taken over that position. George now running in the 12th spot. Of course, Brian Yazik running in 4th. So if they finish how they are right now, granted we do have about 120 laps left to go, this would put Brian Yazik healthily back into the championship fight before the night's over, especially as we go back into Martinsville next week, where Thomas George has been so strong on the short tracks. Up at the front of the field, though, they're side by side for the lead. Jonathan Cogswell and the Davey Ellison throwback is up top. James Moore got a pretty good run off the last corner, but of course momentum, JR, here goes to the guy up top.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually turn 3 and 4 has the more momentum up on the top side. So if you run the high side through 3 and 4, you're usually going to be a little bit better. Turn 1 and 2 usually tends to be more toward the bottom. You can make a lot of passes by driving in on the bottom and sliding up to that middle groove, just carrying the momentum off that way. We see Moore being able to recapture the lead through 1 and 2, doing just that.
Yeah, to your point, whoa, there's one car super sideways going down into turns 1 and 2. Looks like that's Jordan Harnish. Can't tell from this distance.
Yeah, there's a couple cars, guys. Yeah, Barry he pretty much lost off of turn 2, saved it, and also a separate incident right in behind him. Pete Baskins also got loose off of turn 2. Both cars able to save it and keep going. Luckily, a decent amount of apron on the backstretch here at Homestead, so we're able to continue on, but a couple cars getting loose here.
Guys, Mike Rasmus in the 68 machine. Good to have old Mr. Consistency back with us. He started back in the 16th position. He's halved his running order right now to be just inside the top 10. Right now running in the 8th position. I wouldn't be too surprised if we saw old Mr. Consistency up at the front of this field before too long. Of course, one of those drivers, JR, another one that's really good at saving his tires.
Yeah, he absolutely is. He's always around at the end of these races, like you said, and it's because he's very smart with what he's doing on the racetrack. Right now, he's not running around a whole lot of people. He's trying to find a hole to run in by himself, and he's kind of running different lines compared to everybody else. That gives him options in case something happens in front of him.
Oh boy, Kenny, you were talking about, we have the caution on the Speedway.
Oh, and it's O'Barry. He got loose yet again. And JR, do you think that this spin that he just had off of turn 2, no contact on the walls, by the way, but do you think that this slide has anything to do with the fact that he slid a couple corners before this?
Yeah, absolutely. So we know how stiff the suspensions are in these cars. Once you get the tires hot, that is really your only type of suspension in these cars. Any type of movement is in the tires themselves. Once you get those hot, if you do not take it easy the next 2, 3, 4 corners, the car will very easily just whip around on you like we see there with Greg O'Barry through the corner off of turn 2. So yeah, absolutely. When that happens, you have got to slow your pace down, take it easy, get those tire temperatures back down where they need to be, and then you can go back to racing.
Boy, that car looked evil there, JR.
Yeah, These guys are battling a lot. After, we've only ran 15 laps. I think the pace fell off about a half of a tenth or a half of a second during that run. It'll fall off about a whole second through 20, 25 laps. Fall off is huge. That right rear tire, like we talked about, is going to get angry and angrier as we go, and these guys are going to have to be very good with their throttle control throughout this race to avoid doing that.
Kenny, we see I think this is the entire field now down on pit road. Can they really sustain this whole 15 laps every time and get new tires?
Well, pretty much 16 to 17 laps is about the minimum that they'll need to run if they wanted to split out all 8 sets of tires evenly. So this is pretty much right on the mark. You wouldn't want to pit much earlier than this if you can help it. But it looks like the entire field going to take their tires here. And one thing I noticed is that some drivers actually used the access road on pit entry and some did not, which kind of made for some chaos on pit entry. A bunch of cars coming together, but everyone able to sort that out. We'll have to keep an eye on that in pit entry and future cautions, but I think they'll sort it out beyond this caution. No real problematic things happen there, but yeah, it's a really high tire wear racetrack, so drivers are going to really be thinking about tires pretty much any time they have an opportunity to get them.
We're going to take this opportunity, this kind of lull in the action. Ryan, if we could look at the current championship point standings for these guys, we're getting pretty deep into the season. After this race, there's only 2 more left until we close out not only just this season, but the entire 2022 calendar year for the Pretty Good Racing League's Premier Series. You can see Thomas George, he's still got a pretty decent commanding lead there over Brian Yazik, and some of those points come from the last 2 weeks where he finished, about a spot or 2 ahead of Brian Yazik. And then mostly, though, from last week, Yazik again had that problem. Thomas George continued to be on the podium. That's why you see such a large split. Michael Krobach, the win last week propelled him up a good number of points, but unfortunately for him, Thomas George finished like 2 spots behind him. So not really going to gain a whole lot of points there, JR.
No, absolutely not. You have Woody Mahan. He's still maintaining that 5th place points position. Looking to have a good run here early, started up front. Chance Manning, he's in 6th place. Your first season champion of this year was Scott Eckridge. He is in 7th place. Adam Jersky still holding on to 8th. He's not here tonight. Rich Jetty 9th. Jordan Harnish is in 10th. Several close points battles through here. We can see down even 10th through 15th is not that far apart, and we still have drop weeks taken into consideration as well.
For sure, of course, there are 2 drop weeks over this season, but you can only take them in the first 11 races. So we're all going to know where everybody stands in terms of drop weeks after the next race at Martinsville Speedway. Green flag once again flies through the air. James R. Moore pulls away from the field with his right foot on the loud pedal. He's got a pretty commanding lead here over the likes of the 22 car, Jordan Harnish. Then just behind him, you've got Brian Yazik on the bottom. They're going to fan out, though, almost 3 wide coming off the corner.
Yeah. Right after a green flag, this is the easiest time to try to make up some positions. If you can get a jump on the guys in front of you or go somewhere they are not through turns 1 and 2, get a good run down the back straightaway, it could pay off for you there for sure.
Yeah, Brian Yazik using the bottom side. That's going to pay off for him. He's going to get down to the inside of Jordan Harnish, make the move up off the corner onto the straightaway. Now he's going to put his sights on the 21 car at James Moore, see if he can't put that 55 car back in the lead before too long.
Absolutely, that's where he wants to keep it. That's the best place to be. That is where you can avoid contact that has been happening off and on throughout this field. We've not seen any major contact, any big wrecks yet, but there's always the possibility of that, and this is one of those tracks that if the contact happens, if you choose the wrong line entering the corner, you can be in big trouble. It's hard to avoid stuff on a track like this where it is a self-cleaning racetrack.
Just as we're about to talk about that battle for the 5th and 6th position, Brian Yazik gets a huge run off the corner. Kenny, looked like James got pretty loose coming off of turn 4. That allowed for Brian Yazik to get right to his outside, and now it looks like he's going to take the lead.
Yeah, it really did, and it looked like Moore just had to really pinch off his exit when that happened, and Yazik did a really nice job arcing in and out of turn 3 and 4. Really used up the whole racetrack and had a nice bit of momentum off of 4 last time by. I'm surprised he didn't clear him after the last set of corners, but it looks like he'll have a nice little push here from Harnish in behind, but still Moore doing a good job on that bottom, holding on to the lead.
Well, Jerry, you talk about, the corners and the lines being different in terms of turns, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You talk about the bottom working a lot better in turns 1 and 2. Is that just the fact that the sun's currently pretty much only in turns 3 and 4, 1 and 2 right now being shaded?
A little bit of that plays in for sure, but turn 1 and 2, it feels like it has a larger radius. It's a more natural corner to where you maintain that same radius throughout the whole corner. Turn 3 and 4 is a little bit different to where it feels like the corner opens up on entry and then closes up on a corner exit, and that really leads to the high line being dominant down there. So that's one of the reasons why you see a lot of people running high through 3 and 4 and making those big gains down the front stretch.
Boy, Jordan Harnish got a really good run up for turn 2, and all he did with it was pretty much push the 55 of Brian Yazik further deep down into the corner. James Moore got a really big run, dove to the inside of the 22 car Harnish, but it looks like he's having a really hard time using that momentum as they come off the corner. Still to the inside of Harnish. I don't think he's going to clear him before they can come off the corner. Yeah, look at the momentum that Harnish is going to get, just pinching these guys down.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's another thing. We talk about 1 and 2 being great on the bottom, but that's if you do not have somebody right on your door. When they're right on your door, you're not able to take that natural line up off the corner and use the full length or the full width of the racetrack to keep your momentum up.
So now move the 22 car, Jordan Harnish, back out into the lead. Just behind him, you've got James Moore. He's still quite the figurehead in this. Then Brian Yazik in third. Right now, he's being swamped, though, by the likes of the 28 car of Jonathan Cogswell, and then the 68 car, Mike Rasmus, on Mr. Consistency.
Yeah, definitely. Mike just we got a spin up off of turn 2. I'm not sure which car
like
that was.
Barry.
Yeah, Barry loses it again, and he is not as lucky this time around. And that will pretty much be the end of his night. He impacted the wall heavily, but we stay green.
Oh, you could see his right front suspension. I mean, that wheel was hanging on by the threads, so he would have been pretty much done after about 11 minutes of pit road time. And yeah, just gets a little bit sideways. Pete Baskins can't check up for him, JR.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things. Guys going from the bottom up to the top, if they start to get loose when that happens, the guy that has the momentum on the top side is not going to be able to check up for him. So sometimes contact like that happens, incidental contact, and there's just nothing you can do about it.
Back up at the front of the field, they're still side by side for the lead. Jordan Harnish on the outside. James Moore in the 21 car down on the inside. It's a battle between the 21 and the 22 cars as they now head into turns 1 and 2. Just behind these drivers right now is Jonathan Cogswell, just waiting in the weeds, the popcorn position as we sometimes call it.
He's just kind of observing what these guys are doing, and he's you also see him running a slightly different line than the two guys in front of him. That's just to make sure he maintains some air on that front end and not overuse the front tires that he has early in the run. The one thing I like is what we see James Moore doing here early. He's being very dedicated to the bottom of this racetrack. That's going to help his tires in the longer run. We'll have to see if we can get this green flag run going longer and longer, how Jordan Harnish's tires are going to end up being, because he has been on that high side throughout this run so far.
I'm also really interested to see how the tires shape out as the run goes on for guys like Scott Eckridge, a guy like, let's just say, Michael Krobach, last week's winner. And then how about, too, guys like Pete Baskins and even Mike Rasmus, some of those guys that like to take care of their tires as their long runs go on.
Yeah, absolutely. I can guarantee you Scott Eckridge has not started doing anything yet. He was fastest in practice. He has the speed, but also knows in practice he was taking care of his tires and seeing what that run was like. So we'll have to see what he's able to do as we go on. I expect him to be up front. Definitely Rasmus, he's not ran all of the races. He's here to try to win, and he is very smart and knows how to do that. So pay attention to him. He'll also be somebody that will be up front if we get a long run.
Yeah, what do you call that when you don't run all the races, but you just show up to win, Kenny?
That's trophy hunting, baby. That's what I've been doing lately. It's a lot of fun.
Mike Rasmus currently riding just inside the top 5 in the 5th position. Just ahead of him is the 55 car, Brian Yazik. We've talked about it earlier on the show. We're just going to touch on it a couple more times. Yazik needs a good run tonight to kind of just propel himself back into that championship run equation. You see the 22 car, Jordan Harnish. He must have gotten in a whole heap of trouble there coming off of turn 2. He's going to get swamped by a couple drivers. He'll deposit himself for right now back into that 5th position.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's one of the things. I think he's just used his tires up too quickly early into this run. We'll have to see if he's able to get the momentum back going. Maybe he just had a slight slip, but definitely fell back very quickly right there. So, yeah, keep an eye on the guys that are going to be coming and going throughout this run. Like we talked about earlier, Scott Eckridge, he's still back in 14th. He does not think it is time to go yet.
Michael Krobach, another one of those drivers, just kind of biding his time for right now. You can see him just right around in the 7th and 8th position. Yeah, you mentioned, you know, he is quite a bit higher up there than Scott Eckridge, but he just seems like another one of those drivers, not really, you know, taking his tires, you know, his aggression out on his tires, trying to get up through the field too fast. He's kind of just riding around, driving Miss Daisy at the moment.
Yeah, and you know, Austin, we've not had a long green flag run yet. I know the guys that are smart, they want to get one of these long runs in. Does not matter where you finish in that run. They just want to get a long run in, and then they can see what their tire wear was once they make a pit stop, and then they can gauge from there. Was I driving too hard? Was I not driving hard enough? That's what the guys that run up front that know how to drive these cars right to the limit know how to do, and they will use that throughout this race, but they need that long run to kind of gauge where they're running right now.
Turning up the wick right now is the 55 car, Brian Yazik. He puts his car on the inside down of the 28 car, Jonathan Cogswell. He's going to come off of turn 2 to complete the pass. Jonathan Cogswell, that moves him back into the 3rd position. Brian Yazik can now set his sights on to James Moore.
Yeah, Yazik kind of getting a little bit of a slow start. He already had track position, but he's now starting to make his way up. We'll see if he can chase James down here in the next few laps. He does look like he has a good run going, very smooth with that car at the moment.
72 car there, that's Michael Krobach. He's one of our top 3 championship leaders. Unfortunately, he's pretty far off the pace of taking home the actual title championship, but of course, we've still got some drop weeks left before this thing is all figured out, said and done, and the fat lady sings. So he's not completely out of it. He's still got a lot left to play for. You saw him just there jump down to the inside of Barrett Palamas, one of the drivers making his PGRL debut, to the best of our knowledge.
Yeah, Barrett having a great run so far in that 79 car. He's running in 6th place, challenging for the top 5 there, and started all the way back in 19. So definitely somebody to watch for. See if he's a guy that charges early or if he's going to be around at the end as well.
One guy who continues to charge is the 72 car, Michael Krobach. He comes off of turn 2, looks to the inside of Mike Rasmus as they head down into turns 3 and 4. He continues to march his way up through the field, JR. I think he's kind of done with taking care of his tires right now. I think he wants to see how far up the field he can get.
Yeah, we've had a good run so far. We're about where we were on that last run where we had a caution a little bit further in. Taking the caution flag laps into account. So yeah, he knows what his car did at this point during the last run. He's ready to start pushing. We got a car loose off of turn 2, spinning to the inside. He keeps it off the wall, but the caution is going to come out.
Oh, they're still wrecking. That was Jordan Harnish, hard up into the outside wall. They're spinning to avoid him. You saw Christopher DeWald having to take some evasive action there. I think you got a piece of damage in that.
Yeah, Austin, that was the leader, James Moore, that actually triggered the initial spin down the back straightaway.
Yeah, looking at the replay here, guys, looks like James just got on the scene between the very extreme low line and the line above it. And really, when he kind of transitioned between the banking there, really got loose off of turn 2, which that's a loose line anyway. And did a nice job locking it down, didn't hit anything. But then, yeah, like you talked about, Austin, a couple drivers wrecking after the fact with Harnish. And it looks like that's actually kind of a separate incident between Harnish and DeWald. It'd be nice if we could see a replay between them two, because DeWald actually just kind of gets loose. I thought maybe these two collided avoiding more, but they didn't. DeWald lost it off of 2, and these two drivers, pretty competitive drivers this evening, both slam into the outside wall.
Yeah, both those guys been flirting with the top 5 and the lead all night. You could see them. This is after the fact. Yeah, Kenny, you called it. Christopher DeWald just getting a little bit loose there coming off of turn 2 and had nowhere to go except hit the 22 car of Jordan Harnish. Pretty much the entire field now back down pit road, Kenny.
Yeah, so we ran a little bit further that time, just about 20 laps or so on that run. So everybody's going to come down, grab fuel and full service here. But I think for some of these long run guys, they're really, like Eckridge and Krobach, they were just starting to kind of push and go through the field. And we had this caution again, so they really have not had an opportunity to show their long run speed yet.
We're going to take a quick break here and go to commercial. Don't go anywhere, though. We'll be right back right after this.
This is the world's premier online racing simulation. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat from your home computer with the most realistic online motorsports experience you'll find anywhere. Race virtually in the world's biggest events with officially licensed series, cars, and tracks. From the high banks of Daytona to the blistering speeds of Indianapolis, the dirt of Eldora to the world's most legendary road courses. It's all here, and with more than 180,000 people just like you already driving, you'll always have someone to race. Ready to get behind the wheel? Sign up at iRacing.com to get started.
Welcome back to the High, Wide, and Handsome 200 presented by the Joy of Driving Homestead. Lights are still on above the iRacing pace cars, so I'd like to take a moment here just to thank tonight's sponsor. If you're looking for some entertaining sim racing content, look no further than the Joy of Driving. Follow Mark Cohn's racing escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with his cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. You can follow along by subscribing to the Joy of Driving on YouTube, or you can like his Facebook page at facebook.com/the Joy of Driving channel. Go ahead, for sure. Go ahead and look at Mark. He hasn't been racing here for a good hot minute, but always one of those drivers that's very competitive. And when he does stream in these races, it's always a good time to go in there and just kind of hang out and chill.
Yeah, I can speak from experience that it's always fun to be able to share your experiences from the driver's seat in iRacing and be able to just kind of hang out with your friends and family as they watch you drive from your perspective. And sometimes you can kind of show new people the iRacing experience from a different perspective that have never seen it before, and educate people who are interested in iRacing, and it's a good way to kind of build upon the platform.
Yeah, it makes it a lot more fun just to see someone else's viewpoints and how they drive the corners. And also, I mean, when they can do that thing that, you know, you and Mark do where you guys stream, you kind of add your own insights. There's some commentary there. It's you know, a lot of comedic value. It always makes it a lot more fun to watch that when someone's just having a good time and speaking their mind as the race goes on. But for right now, the lights are out atop the iRacing pace car. If you're just now joining us, we're going to cross the start-finish this time by just start lap 40. We've had 2 cautions so far. A plethora of drivers in the lead. Woody Mahan started out on the pole. Right now he's fallen back into the 5th position. Green flag flies once more as Brian Yazik puts his foot on the loud pedal. He's going to lead the field into turns 1 and 2. Absolutely clear from the rest of them. They're Noah's Ark style just behind them.
Yeah, definitely Yazik getting out to a great start here. We actually see Mike Rasmus looking like that he's going to take over that 2nd position from Jonathan Cogswell, but Jonathan's not done. He's going to dive to the inside of turn 3 here.
Yeah, momentum's going to shift up to Rasmus as they come off the corner, but it's all about right now, Kenny, how much you want to put the throttle down as you come off the corner, because if you put it down too hard, too fast, you end up spinning the rear axle, and sometimes that can force you down onto the apron, like we've seen happen to a couple of drivers, happen to John Hunter Nemechek in real life coming off of turn 2.
Yeah, it can. And these first few laps on a restart, especially with these new tires, are pretty treacherous. You got to be really, you have a lot of grip, but it's kind of a fine line. So you're really going pretty quick lap times wise, but you have to kind of take it with a grain of salt because it's really easy to get these cars sideways. And with how twitchy they are, it's hard to bring them back.
Up front, it's still Brian Yazik in the 55. Very much needs a strong run tonight. Very much also needs for his championship competitor, Thomas George, to finish further down through the field. Thomas, though, he's having a lot better of a night right now after that most recent wreck. Took out some pretty fast competitors up ahead of him, kind of those fighting up there with Brian Yazik for the win. So that, of course, not really going to take any points away from Yazik, but they are going to give points to Thomas George. He's just having a pretty solid night here, trying to pad his point total, or at least kind of keep it consistent. Just behind him, though, is Season 1 winner for this year, Scott Eckrich, for the 70 car.
And Scott slowly making his way up. We've seen him around the 14th to 16th position. Early in this race, he's already up in the 8th. And I do not think he started running yet, guys, so that is bad for the competition. Fast in practice, he's going to continue to be faster and faster as we get into this race.
And Jared, I'll tell you what, I've been keeping an eye on that 36 car, Rich Chetty, just behind him. As the race has gone on, I've kind of seen Rich Chetty always right near Scott Eckrich running. So I don't know if maybe Rich Chetty is just kind of saying, you know, the old Burger King approach. For instance, McDonald's will just dump tons and tons of money into figuring out the best place to put a McDonald's. And what does Burger King do to combat that? They just put a location in about a half a block away. Maybe that's what Rich Chetty is doing, saying, I don't need to figure out how hard I need to push. I'll just do whatever Scott Eckrich does. As you can see, the 28 car, Jonathan Cogswell, hops up to the outside of the 55 car, Brian Yazik, giving a pretty good go here to the 79 car of Barrett Palamas.
Yeah, absolutely. The outside line has now started to prevail. We've got a few laps on the tires. Tire temps are up to where they need to be. Guys feel comfortable with the car. They're starting to run that faster line and making ground doing it. The issue is, how hard do you want to continue to run up there? Because if we get a long run, like we said earlier, it's going to make your car slower at the end of the run.
Mike Rasmus looks to the outside of the 55 car, Brian Yazik, thinks better of it. Looks like he's going to poke his nose down to the inside. No, he's going to back out of it one more time. Mr. Consistency, always quite patient here, and especially the middle portions of these races. Don't look now, but his LPM teammate of Michael Krobach just behind him in the 72 car, and then you've got our pole sitter, Woody Mahan.
Yeah, and to your point earlier, Austin, I mean, guys like Mike Rasmus, Michael Krobach, Scott Eckrich, if you struggle in these races, those three are the guys that you're going to want to follow. You're going to want to try to be around them. If you get the chance to be around them, do not try to attempt to pass them, because you're going to use your stuff up and they're going to go flying by you later. Just follow them, see what they're doing, learn from it, and you'll be better off as the season goes on.
Oh yeah, it's like I've always said, JR, in our bootleg racing league races. If you ever pass JR when you're running single file inside the first 20 or so laps, you're using your tires too much, because he's going to fly by you before too long. And Scott Eckrich always seems to do that in these races. He just kind of knows when to turn up the wick, put his foot down to the floor, and pass all of his competitors more often than not. If he's not winning, he's certainly up there on the podium.
Yeah, you see at the moment, Jonathan Cogswell is actually pulling out to a decent lead, a little over a half a second over Barrett Palamas, and then about a half a second back to Brian Yazik. So the top two are starting to stretch it out.
Just behind those top two, Brian Yazik, currently, he's being absolutely hounded here by the 68 machine of Mike Rasmus. Oh, Mr. Consistency, just not really giving him a hard time, but kind of making sure he's aware. If you slip up, make a simple mistake, I'm going to come on the inside or the outside, take away that podium position from you. Just behind those guys, rounding out the top five, is Woody Mahan. In sixth position is James Moore. Super fast all day long. Kenny, he was actually in the lead before he had that spin down the backstretch. Did a phenomenal job to lock it down and not get any damage.
Yeah, and he's been really pushing hard to try to regain that track position, and just the body language of his race car has been a lot more aggressive than the cars around him, but he's starting to get back up towards the front, up into sixth place at the moment, and still pushing to get up into the top five. He's definitely one of those drivers who's more on the aggressive side, as opposed to some of the other drivers we've talked about, like Krobach and Eckrich and their approach to this race. And it's really interesting just to see the different mentalities with all the drivers and how they're approaching this race. And me personally, guys, I thought this was going to be going to have more long green flag runs, and as we get closer and closer to halfway. We haven't seen that yet, but that's not to say that we won't have another green flag run later on in this race, including this run. But the short run guys have really had the advantage thus far, because we just haven't had enough green flag laps.
The battle you saw on your screen just a couple of seconds ago, that was for the 14th position. That was John Wilco going around the outside of the 25 car of Brady Cure. And of course, we always like to talk about it on these broadcasts, so you can go ahead and check it off on your PGRL on VGN Bingo. John Wilco, we're going to take a quick second. Of course, we got to talk about his paint, JR. He's got a fantastic looking Halloween-esque paint scheme tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk about it each and every week, the great paint schemes that he is able to provide at the track. And once again, he's done another one. And, again, each and every week we talk about the talent that is in the PGRL League. But the talent's not just from the driver's seat. We have a lot of talented painters, John being one of those.
Well, I tell you what, put a couple of pumpkins and peanuts on there. That is all Tony Stewart from right about 2002, I believe, when he drove that awesome-looking scheme there. So famous as well. Lots of die-cast models made off of that car. Up front, it's, whoa, one car goes spinning down the back straightaway. Big save there. I think that was Harnish in the 22 car, Kenny.
Yeah, and I believe, well, it looks like, yeah, he's going to keep continuing here. He's way at the back. He's actually going to make a pit stop here. Kind of unscheduled, but because of that moment, he's going to come down pit lane here, lose all of his track position, and but he will be the only, well, there's one other car one lap down, Jacob Bruff in 18th. Other than that, the other two drivers off the lead lap are DeWald and O'Barry, who are out. So I wouldn't count Harnish out of this one, but he's lucky to have a decently clean race car still.
Yeah, it certainly is. I mean, these guys can have a long green flag run, and as soon as they come out of the pit stops, you know, a caution flag comes out, or as soon as the 22 car of Harnish has to come in to make his next pit stop, there could be a caution. So he's definitely not out of this thing yet. You see a battle for the lead here on your screen. That's the 28 car of Jonathan Cogswell on the outside, down at his inside, making his PGRL debut. Barrett Pollum is in the 79 car. Barrett's got a lot of momentum here going down the back straightaway. He's going to keep that car down to the inside of the 28 of Jonathan Cogswell as they round through turns 3 and 4, using all that momentum possible as the 28 car of Cogswell. He can't put the power down fast enough. He's going to forfeit the lead here to Barrett.
Yeah, Barrett providing a great show for everyone during his debut here, being able to get up there and take the lead away from our veterans that are in this league that are very good. But once again, early in this run, we're only about lap 14 into this run. So we'll have to see how things play out if the run continues to go. Hopefully we continue to have a green flag here.
Jerry, you talk about that, you know, lap 14 of the run. I almost think of that Larry McReynolds in the back of my head going, looking at the trans here, to think that, Kenny, there's probably going to be another caution here in about 1 or 2 laps.
Yeah, I mean, some drivers are definitely going to be thinking about that, but I feel like the pack has been a little more spread out this run. Granted, ooh, Brian Yazik with a moment, quite a moment off of turn 2, and he's actually going to lose a spot at least, maybe 2 down the backstretch, but that was odd. That was kind of a similar situation as Michael Krobach is going to throw it 3 wide. Good move down to turn 3. Yazik is all kinds of upset down here in 3 and 4, but I was just going to say that it kind of looked like it was a green-looking run here, but as soon as I start talking about that, cars start having moments. And JR, talk about how it seems to be pretty treacherous down there between the extreme low line and the middle line, that seam down there, especially in 1 and 2, for whatever reason, cars are getting really upset down there.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, like we said earlier, there's progressive banking on this track. It is most noticeable as far as how the car changes in driving in turns 1 and 2. So if you go from that extreme low line just up to that second, third groove, the car can really get upset going across those seams, going through that transition of banking. And even though it's only 1 or 2 degrees of transition, it feels like the car is handling completely different as you go through that. And a lot of that's because you're getting the right side tires on one set of banking and the left side tires on another set of the banking. It really changes the wedge in the car and how the front tire's working, and can really make that rear end whip around quickly on you.
Boy, James Moore got super loose coming off of turn 2. Almost had to bring the car all the way down to the apron just to keep a handle on it. Now you look at this 3-wide battle here. This is for what looks to be 7th position. Scott Eckridge got clowned to the left, Jokers to the right. Stuck in the middle, Woody Mahan going to back out of this fight, but guys, Scott Eckridge turning up the wick now. He's decided it's go time.
Yeah, definitely decided that he is now ready to charge here. So he's going to start moving forward. We're going to start seeing the pace that everyone else has, because he will be the one that you're going to be judging yourself off of. We know he has speed each and every week. Like I said earlier, once again, fastest in practice. So everybody's going to need to fasten their seat belts and see if they can hang on to him when he gets there.
Battle in the championship for the lead. Battle here between the two championship leaders on the racetrack as Thomas George in the 6 car goes around Brian Yazik in the 55. Now this means Yazik, if they finish how they are right now, is going to lose even more points to Thomas George in the championship standings. And don't look now, but it looks like Brian Yazik is going to fall back another position to the likes of Scott Eckrich just behind him. And as soon as that happens, we've got another 3-wide battle up at the front of the field. That's the likes of the 72 car, Michael Krobach, the 68 machine of Michael Rasmus, or Mr. Consistency.
Yeah, Rasmus we actually saw pushing Krobach down the straightaway there, pushing him off into turn 1, and then he went to the high side as Krobach went down to the bottom. One thing to note, Krobach has been dedicated to the bottom of this racetrack throughout the entire race so far, the entire 61 laps that we've completed. And he is still in second place, or has actually moved up to second place. So he's done nothing but make progress doing that. And he is trying to save the tires. That's why he's running the bottom. And now it's starting to pay off for him.
Yeah, you talk about making progress up to the second position. He makes even more progress, leads that last lap. Now continues to pull away from the 2 cars behind him. Move that 72 car up to the front.
I've been watching some battles throughout the field, and Eckrich just got around Brian Yazik, and Eckrich had a moment as well down in turns 1 and 2 down on that bottom line. Able to make the pass on Yazik, and Yazik just seems to really be falling off the pace. Maybe he pushed the issue a little bit too much at the start of this run. He's really the only championship front runner who is really pushing the issue at the beginning of these runs. All these other drivers we've been talking about have kind of been sitting back and waiting, and now the roles have seemed to be flip-flopped as the run has progressed.
And guys, 2 weeks ago we had the opportunity to call the race done by the Endurance League events. That league being put on, of course, by a PGRL member, Michael Stroll. Always fun memories of calling out the old 25 car, 88 car duo of Stroll, and I forget who the other gentleman was, but they both put on the Endurance League events there a couple weeks ago. It was here in Homestead for the Vice City 400. It was in the Arca Menard Chevrolet Impalas. Had a couple of the PGRL guys come out and represent the lead, and we saw Michael Krobach, one of those guys. He was fast pretty much all night long. One of those drivers that, again, stayed very committed to the bottom of the track.
Yeah, exactly, Austin. And those were the Arca Menards cars that they were running. Completely different car, but even so, Krobach is continuing to run this race the same way as he did that one, and that is on the bottom, conserving those tires, and it has paid off so far. But right now he's getting a challenge once again from the newcomer Barrett Palmas.
Chad Mikas, that's the other driver. Of course, the lead being put on by Michael Strobe. You can see still this battle for the lead. You got Barrett Palmas. He's making a comeback here. He wants this lead back after he saw Michael Krobach kind of take it, get out to about a tenth or two of a second of a lead. And now Barrett's decided that he'd rather have the lead back after these last couple laps.
Absolutely, but Michael Krobach here, he's saying, I like to run the bottom, but I don't have to. So he's going to continue to race hard for that lead, running in the middle groove through 3 and 4, actually going to go to the high side through 1 and 2.
Oh, yeah, you call that bound and determined. That's what Michael Krobach is. He wants to continue this league. He wants to go back-to-back here, a feat that hasn't been done since Thomas George did it a couple weeks ago. And the last time that happened, that was, of course, Brian Yazik. So all 3 of these main championship competitors might be going back-to-back this season and last season. So very interesting. You see these heavy hitters out here making strides week after week. And, of course, as soon as we say Krobach's bound and determined, doesn't matter where he wants to go or where he needs to go. He goes back down to the inside as you see Barrett Palmas. He retakes the lead on the outside of the track, all high, wide, and handsome.
Yeah, and that's a good learning experience there. So Krobach ran the high line through 1 and 2. He lost the lead out to it, but got a huge run down the back straightaway, got to the inside. Unfortunately, the inside lane just does not have the momentum through 3 and 4 like the high line does. That gave Barrett Palmas the lead back. So that's a good learning experience. If something like that pops up late in the race, you know what worked and what didn't work.
Scott Eckrich flipped the switch, and like a light bulb, he has turned that car's performance up to the next level, shining bright as he continues to climb through the field. Right now, he's made his way all the way up into the last podium position. He started this run just outside the top 10. He has been slowly but surely, methodically making his way up through the field, as you can see some of the guys that pushed their tires earlier on in the run fall further back through, mainly being the 55 car Brian Yasek, and guys, the 70 car, he's coming for the lead.
Yeah, and I'm looking at his lap times. I mean, he starts off his run, 3/4 of a second slower than what everybody else starts their run at, and he just stays more consistently throughout the run because of that. And now that we're at the end here, he's 1/2 of a second faster than everybody else, and I don't even think he's running hard, to be honest with you. So definitely one of the best at saving his tires, conserving it, and knowing what the car is doing and how he needs to drive it accordingly.
You can see Scott Eckrich now all over the rear end of his Loud Pedal Motorsports teammate of Michael Krobach. He might make a move this time by into turns 1 and 2, but part of this might be, sometimes, how do you race against a teammate, Kenny, when you're both going for a win, but, that other guy you're racing against, he's going for a championship too, and if he wins tonight, all the more points for the better.
Yeah, for sure. But the good thing, at least about this place, is there's a lot of options as far as where and when to pass someone. So, Eckrich clearly looks to be the faster driver, but he's being patient, just kind of setting things up here, just kind of riding in behind Krobach at the moment. So I'm sure he's going to be calculating about it. He will want to get up around his teammate, but, he'll make sure he does it and doesn't put Krobach in such a terrible position. There's still a lot of racing to go. And like you said, Austin, Michael's kind of in the championship hunt, so obviously Eckrich is smart enough to not jeopardize that.
Up at the front, it's still the 79 car of Barrett Palamas. He's going to be looking to the outside here of a lap car, that being the 7 car of Jacob Ruff. You see him all the way down at the bottom. Oh, he might be changing up his line here part of the way through the corner, guys.
Yeah, that's one of the hardest things when you catch a lap car, is trying to figure out where they're going. You obviously want to keep all the air on that front nose that you can for the downforce to keep the front tires planted. If you decide incorrectly and get right in behind that lap car, it is going to slow you down tremendously and allow those guys behind you to get a good run.
Guys, it looks like Yasek has formed another charge here. He fell back quite a few positions, and now he has charged his way back up to 4th place, just got around Thomas George. So and now he's kind of approaching this train of the top 3 leaders. So maybe just had to kind of sit back, regain his composure after having a few loose moments there, and now is back on track.
Yasek, obviously, he needs another good run here tonight like he started off the season with, to try and eke back into Thomas George's point lead. Right now, he's only going to gain about a minimal amount of points. Only for, if they were to finish how they're running right now, he pretty much gained like a point or 2 over championship competitor and leader at the moment, Thomas George, in the 6 machine. So he's going to need a lot better of a night from him and a lot worse of a night for Thomas George. For right now, those 2 drivers, obviously, Kenny, if you're Thomas George, you're doing everything right now that you want to do. You just want to keep that 55 car in your sights. You've got a large point lead. Just want to keep padding that thing before the end of the season, doing everything you need to do, just enough to eke out the championship victory here to close out the year.
Yeah, and you can tell that that's kind of the way Thomas has been racing this week in particular. He's just kind of been riding, hasn't made a whole lot of aggressive moves in any way, just kind of been right there, 5th place. That's a perfect run. That's all he really needs to have to finish out this season. Just a few weeks to go here, but yeah, Thomas has just been kind of running a champion's race, not really pushing the issue.
See Scott Eckrich, he's been pretty careful about not making his way around the 72 car Michael Krobach for right now. I kind of wonder if those drivers are talking about just taking it a little bit easier right now, trying to see if they can't get around the 79 car of Barrett Palamas, or maybe they're just trying to set him up. And right now, just as I say that, it looks like patience has run out for the 70 car of Scott Eckrich, now looking to the high side of teammate Michael Krobach in the 72 car.
Yeah, definitely. Scott's going to want to make his way by. He's, we've talked about him saving his tires. you're going to continue to do that until you get stuck behind somebody that's running the same line that you're running. At some point, it's going to take effect on your front tires. You're going to start using them more by having to turn the steering wheel a little bit more because of the lack of downforce that you have. So he's going to want to make his way by in the next few laps if he can, just to regain that air. He's trying to look to the insides to come off the floor, but doesn't quite have a run just yet.
Yeah, still working on trying to develop that run so he gets at least a nose or maybe a spotter call down to the inside or outside. You see Krobach now goes up to the top side. I'm not sure if this is Krobach experimenting with the line or trying to see if Eckrich can't eke out an opportunity here. And you can see just the kind of difference between those two lines. I don't think Scott was able to run the line he wanted to down on the bottom. Wasn't able to make sure he was clear up. You saw him get pretty tight there, not maximize the opening up of his wheel there coming up off the corner.
He definitely has to be careful. The closer that Krobach runs him in the corner, he's going to have to turn his wheel a little bit more on corner exit. And these cars, the tires are worn out. They're moving around more than they have the entire run. You see Scott actually move up into that second groove at the moment to try to keep his momentum up, and it's going to pay off for him through 1 and 2 there.
Yeah, he's going to make the move here on Michael Krobach. So go ahead and move the 70 car of Scott Eckrich up one more position. But Kenny, this is where it gets difficult because unlike Michael Krobach, Barrett Palamas is not a teammate with Scott Eckrich. You can see that on the bottom left-hand side of your screen. It says independent. He doesn't have any teammates, and that means he doesn't have anyone to work with. That also means he's working against everyone else, so he's not going to get out of the way here for Scott Eckrich. He's going to make Eckrich go around him the hard way. Sometimes that's the inside. Sometimes that means Eckrich just has to wait for an opportunity.
Yeah, and on top of that, he's a newcomer, so everyone is pretty much unfamiliar with Barrett as far as racing against him in PGRL in these cars. So they don't, they're kind of just feeling out how he drives as a race car driver. So far, it's been quite intelligently, to be honest. And but he's, he doesn't have any care in the world as far as points go. He's just out here to win this race. So all the other drivers really need to take that into account. And you can see Eckrich really experimenting with lines, just kind of trying over-unders, things like that, trying to find where Barrett is weak. And you see he does make a mistake off of turn 2. That's going to give a way to the inside for Scott Eckrich. He'll go down to the bottom in turn 3, and Barrett goes all the way to the top. We'll see if Eckrich can clear up.
Might have gotten into the wall just a bit, Kenny.
He might have. He really used the extreme outside line. Oh yeah, he did. He hit the wall in turn 3 and 4 there.
You're going to see a white car here in the background. That is Pete Paskins in the 40 machine. He is one lap down, so he's not racing against these guys. He is, however, he's going to want to try to utilize these new tires there, JR, and try to see if he can't put himself on the lead lap just in case a caution comes out to make sure he's not trapped one lap down.
Yeah, absolutely. After making a pit stop out of sequence from guys, if you can get your lap back, that gets you caught up. If there's another caution, obviously you can come in and get tires equal to what everybody else has. If you end up being trapped a lap down and not in that lucky dog position, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to have to keep those tires you have on that car, the old tires, in order to try to get into a spot to get the lucky dog pass. So that's what Pete's working for right now, trying to make sure he's on that lead lap so he's back on the same strategy as everyone else if a caution comes out.
The battle that you see on your screen right now is for 8th position. That was between old DRJ, Don Runkle Jr., and the 86 car of Isaiah Dupre. Kenny, we have some early pit stops going on right now.
Yeah, and I was just about to say that the fuel window is going to be really stretched on this run. These drivers are going to go as far as they absolutely can because the fuel window is going to take them to right at the mark as far as what we've estimated the cars can go for the final run. So really, I would expect or hope that drivers would try to make it to around lap 84, 85 because we projected 48 laps max on a tank of fuel. Maybe they could stretch it a little bit further since they're letting off in the corners a lot more later in the run. But this might be a little bit early. However, as we've run through this race, maybe drivers have kind of figured out how long they can actually go on a tank of fuel. But I would think that most drivers up front are pitting with the intent of it being their last stop.
Well, JR, I mean, could you also not say you want to undercut the field? Figure maybe a caution is going to come out, about maybe 30 laps from right now, and if you're one of the first cars to pit, you're going to be the one sitting out there the best. If everyone has to pit, you want to be the first one to pit before the caution comes out, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Undercut is huge on a track like this where the pace falls off by more than a second throughout a run. So definitely, if you come in early, do that undercut, you're going to have tremendous speed compared to the guys that are still on track, and it will take you a very short amount of time to recapture those guys, chasing them down on the racetrack and get your lap back.
See this battle on your screen right here. This is not a battle for position like I just talked about. This is Pete Baskins in the 40 car. He is still one lap down. Right now he's trying to see if he can't pass the driver in second position, that being the 79 car, Parapalamas. And then he still has the leader of Scott Eckridge to pass before he gets his lap back. We see the 79 car. Perry's coming down pit road this time by, Kenny.
Yeah, and this is the first driver that everybody's going to be watching here. One of the first front runners to come down pit road. Don Wilco Jr. also coming down. Rich Jetty coming down as well. So, you know, anybody planning on trying to win this race is going to really be paying attention to Palamas and his strategy here. And this is about the time that I would think to come in and pit. There's about, you know, what is it, about just under 50 laps to go here. So I think this is right at the window. We'll see if any other drivers decide to stretch it a couple more laps.
Yeah, Brian Yazik is going to stick out on the racetrack, as is Scott Eckridge. This time, right now, Barrett's making his way off of pit road. Of course, these guys on pit exit, JR and Kenny, they have to take the escape route. And Kenny, how hard is it to kind of judge your speed down there on the apron?
Well, you've been in a rhythm for 50-odd laps, so, you know, trying to maximize your speed on brand new tires, but on a really dirty and flat surface, and while going through the gears is quite tricky. You want to get the most you possibly can, but you don't want to slip into the grass. You know, we saw in the Real Cup race, Ryan Blaney spun out on pit exit, so it's really tricky, but you want to maximize what you can get.
Yeah, Ryan Blaney really trying to get after it, went for a spin, actually brought out a very ill-timed caution for the rest of the field. This time by, you see all three of our main championship competitors coming down pit road. You got the 72 of Krobach, the 55 of Yazik, and that number 6 car of Thomas George. All these guys coming in for a 4-tire pit stop. Scott Eckridge is still your leader. Looks like he might be coming down pit road this time by. Yeah, puts his left foot hard on the brake and gets that car all wound up. Randy Slideways trying to get down to pit road.
This is a tricky pit entry because not necessarily because of the transition off the apron, but because of how narrow the pit road is. You think you can kind of arc it into pit lane like at most places, but you really can't. You have to really straighten up and tighten up that entry because of how narrow pit lane is here.
Of course, that means the lead now goes to Woody Mahan if he continues to stay out. I don't think he did. Yeah, Woody Mahan now down onto pit road as well. You're looking at the battle. This is Mike Rasmus down to the inside of the lap car of Pete Baskins in the 40 machine. So Mike Rasmus continues to just kind of sit around here in the top 5. A pretty solid day here for Mr. Consistency.
Yeah, one thing to note here, we saw Barrett Palamas pit from the second position a little bit earlier, obviously laps before Scott Eckridge. So he is actually going into turn 3 right now. Scott Eckridge is just now making it halfway down the back straightaway. So a big gain there by pitting a few laps earlier.
And he's got, what, about a 4-second lead or so over Scott Eckridge for right now. And this isn't the first time we've seen an undercut pay off for the, the first driver to come down pit road in comparison to Scott Eckridge. And boy, every time it always seems like Scott Eckridge does a phenomenal job of taking care of his tires, and he's usually right up there in the mix before the end of the race.
Yeah, definitely. Again, one of the best at taking care of his tires, and now his tires are going to be fresher than yours late in the run. So he's made a good strategy as far as what his driving style allows him to do. So I expect him to be back up here in the next 20 laps.
And of course, being one of the last drivers to come down pit road, he does not even need to worry, Kenny, about running out of fuel. So that allows him to just kind of push it. He can put his foot in the throttle as long as he wants to. He doesn't need to save before the end of the race.
Yeah, and he just needs to manage this run. Now, we watched last week where he was faster than Michael Krobach, but he kind of seemed to hang back too far to the point where he could not make up that gap to Krobach at the end of this race. And for Eckridge's sake, he's hoping that that doesn't repeat itself and that he can actually close this gap. He's got plenty of time to do it. He just needs to make sure that he constantly is gaining on Palamas little by little. Still over 40 or so laps to go in this race, but he just needs to make sure that progress continues throughout this run, that he doesn't have any kind of setback.
Looking a barely for Eckrich that last time by. He did gain a whole 0.2 of a second. While that's not a whole lot, you're lucky to gain any sort of time at all. So even a 1/10 of a second per lap is a big deal. But for right now, I'm sure he really wants for JR that 25 car of Brady Keir on his outside a lap down machine to just, not get out of his way and hurt himself, but maybe just give him a little bit more room to run whatever line he wants.
Yeah, absolutely. You catch a car that's a lap down, you don't necessarily want to just get out of your way, but you want them to give you room. You want them to pick a line, and you're going to obviously go to the next line. You just don't want those two lines to converge or get too close together through the corner. So definitely he was making that pass as quickly as he could just to avoid any type of potential contact.
And Scott Eckrich is trying to make his way around the lap car of Brady Keir. The 72 machine of Michael Krobach made his way around the 55 car of Brian Yazik. So now there's only one car separating Brian from his championship competitor of Thomas George. If they were to finish how they're running right now, the gap in points would stay pretty much similar coming into this. So Brian Yazik needs to get up there and try to get after it, get himself some more points, Kenny.
Yeah, he does, and that's frustrating when you're in that position, and when you're the driver who has to kind of have help, which is Yazik. He has to gain points, but also needs to really have Thomas have a bad run or two. It's kind of frustrating when you're doing all you can, and it's just you're also leaving points on the table, but the championship leader is just kind of riding there. But good run for George. He's doing exactly what he needs to do. He's kind of just controlling his own destiny here, riding on his own. Has not really been flashy today, but doing exactly what he needs to do to win the championship.
Oh yeah, you'd see it all the time from guys like Dale Earnhardt and Jeff Gordon back in the Winston Cup days when you could wrap up the championship a whole race or two early, kind of even before the fat lady sings. You see guys wrap it up. Even Matt Kenseth in 2003 won the championship at Rockingham before even going on to Homestead. Just kind of, having those quiet, consistent days to wrap up the championship, and that's all they really had to do. Another one of those guys doing a good job to be quiet right now and try catch the leader, Scott Eckrich. He's made up another 0.6 of a second compared to the last time we talked about his lead. As you can see right now, Brian Yazik continues to do everything he can to make up more points on Thomas George. Unfortunately, though, for him, Brian Yazik is another one of those guys. He has just about the equal amount of points from Yazik to George, but he has double that because, he's got that extra 20 points between himself and Brian Yazik. So he certainly, you don't want to bet that Krobach's just kind of going to pull over for Yazik here.
No, definitely not, because Krobach won last week, so he's in the championship hunt. He's just way back at the moment. But if anything happens to the two guys in front of him in points, he's going to be able to capitalize on it, and he's going to make sure that he races them every chance that he can get. One interesting thing, we didn't really touch on it earlier. One reason why during the last run we may have seen Brian Yazik charge early and then fall back. We know he led a lap. That's worth one extra point, guys. But if he leads the most laps in the race, that could be worth an additional 3 points. So that may have been why we saw Yazik really charging hard early and then kind of fall back, saving his tires, and then going back at the end once he realized he could not capture that lead.
Excellent point there, JR. You continue to see Yazik all over the rear end here of Michael Krobach. Up at the front of the field, Mike Rasmus has been falling ever so slightly back, further and further from current leader Barrett Palamas. Scott Eckrich continues to just gain heaps of time each and every lap. I mentioned it being 2.9 seconds last time. He's managed to take a whole half a second out of Barrett's lead in the last couple laps.
And at this pace, with this many laps left in the race, he doesn't have, he can basically gain a 1/10 or less from now on, and he will be at the leader by the end of the race. Even at a half a 1/10, he'd be there. So this is plenty of progress. Now, we are starting to get into a little bit of traffic. You got some lap cars mixed in with the leaders. Got John Wilco in there, Jacob Bruff. He's in between the leader and the second place driver at the moment. So most of these PGRL drivers, though, are pretty respectful as lappers. So I don't see it being a huge issue, but it does kind of get you out of your rhythm when you're trying to get around these lappers, even if they do give you room.
Oh boy, we saw it on camera right there, JR. Mike Rasmus had a whole handful of opposite lock coming off of turn 2. As you can see, Scott Eckrich now look down to the inside of Jacob Bruff in the 7 machine. Now Mike Rasmus is forced to take a look down the inside as they head into this next corner, but certainly seems like the driver, Mr. Consistency, has kind of gotten the good out of his tires.
You know, obviously we're down to the last 33, 34 laps of this race. You want to have track position in case caution comes out. So I'm sure when Mike looked up and saw Scott coming, he knew that that's the guy you're racing for the win. And you want to keep that guy behind you at all costs. So I'm sure he was driving a little bit harder than what he wanted to do. He ended up slipping the tires a little bit there. And, you know, at that point you have to let Scott go by. You got to cool your tires down. And Mike did a nice job of doing that. He's got the car back under control.
Going into the corner this time by Scott Eckrich, looks to the inside, makes the pass on lap car there, and John Wilco in the 62 car. And JR, as the sun continues to go down, you see more of the track being in shade than it once was before. How does that more often than not change the handling of these race cars?
Well, the sun going down is going to add grip to this track, and that's going to make these speeds faster. The bad thing is you're going to get grip going into the corner, but you're probably going to get also grip through the center and off, and a lot of times that can cause the rear end to come around even further than what we've seen these guys doing from the center of the corner off. So these guys are going to have to ease into this speed and make sure that they know what the car is doing before they charge hard. If you just continue to attack the speed that this track is gaining, you will eventually overstep your bounds, overstep the grip level, and cause a caution. Hopefully you just spin, but more than likely you're going to have contact with one of the walls and put yourself out of the race.
And Kenny, as the track continues to get cooler and cooler, these cars are going to drive more and more adversely compared to how we started out the day.
Yeah, and you know, by the time this race ends, we're going to be at the very end of a fuel run as well. So the tires are going to be at their weakest. The drivers are going to be theoretically at their weakest, where they're most tired from running 200 miles. There's a lot of factors here kind of working against these drivers, but at least now, you know, the sun's down, track is cooled off, and anybody running with HDR on doesn't have to deal with quite as bad of a sun glare, I don't think, at this point, with the sun kind of getting behind the bleachers there. But you know, we're kind of getting down to it here, and Eckrich, you can see visibly closing the gap on Palamas for the lead.
Oh yeah, he's brought that lead down to about a half a second. Kenny, you talked about all, you know, the tires being at their weakest, the drivers being at their most tired, the fuel load being at its lightest, and that of course brings the spoiler back up higher into the air, but it also adds air up underneath the car for that rear diffuser, so it's kind of like a win some, lose some type of deal in terms of rear grip.
Yeah, definitely. The cars are transitioning right now. Like you said, you lose that fuel load, that spoiler does come up. That gives you rear grip. Going through the corners gives you a little bit more downforce on the rear end. At the same time, you're losing rear weight. So that weight transfer is going back to the front. That's going to cause the car to push a little bit. So there's really a balancing act throughout this run of what the car is doing. And then on top of that, like you mentioned earlier, Austin, the sun is continuing to go down. That's changing the grip level. These drivers are having to deal with the car going through a big transition phase right now, and they do not want to rush into anything or try to overdrive what feels like a lot of grip, because at some point that grip will go away with all these changes that are taking place.
We talk about Scott Eckrich now is caught all the way up to the rear bumper of Barrett Palamas. He has about maybe 25 laps to go before the end of this race, so he doesn't need to make any sudden moves to take the lead. But, you know, JR, it's one thing, like we always say, to catch a guy. It's a completely different thing to pass him.
Yeah, it absolutely is. But like Kenny said earlier in this race, this is one of the tracks that is the easiest to kind of make passes at, because you have options. You can move around throughout these corners and try to get a run. You can set guys up in one corner and then make the pass in the next one. So Scott's in no real hurry here. He knows that he can make that pass when he wants to. I think more than anything, Barrett being one of the new drivers on the service, Scott's probably just wanting to follow and try to see how he drives, try to learn some stuff, do some reconnaissance at the moment, and then use that against him later on.
Cars come off of turn 4 this time by. It's still Scott Eckrich really filling up the rear view mirror right now. The 79 car, Barrett Palamas. Rounding out the podium is still Michael Krobach in the 3rd position. 4th position is currently Brian Yazik in the 55. Then you got Mr. Consistency, Mike Rasmus in the 68 car. Thomas George, currently your championship leader, is running in the 6th position. Rounding out the top 10 is Woody Mahan in 7th, Isaiah Dupre in 8th, DRJ, Don Runkle Jr. in 9th, Rich Jetty rounds out the top 10. Then you've got Jonathan Cogswell. He's the last car on the lead lap. These guys are putting down up front at the top of the field in absolutely just blistering pace.
They definitely are. Business is starting to pick up with these two leaders at the moment. Scott is searching around. He got a run up off of turn 4, but didn't have enough of a run to get to the inside. He chose to push Barrett into turn 1 a little bit, and right now they're kind of playing a cat and mouse game as to which line the other one wants to take, at least on corner entry. We've seen Barrett actually take more of an arc into the corner that he was not doing earlier. It kind of caught Scott off guard, but Scott is continuing to look around.
Yeah, Scott continues to try and check for grip here. And Kenny, I'm kind of surprised he hasn't just put his car all the way up closer to the, if not the top of the track, kind of just the middle to run a line just a little bit adverse to what Barrett is doing. See if he can't take the lead and get all that clean air on the front of his car.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a little bit surprised at that too, because what he could do is he could drive it into the middle, drive it in a little bit deep, and just kind of put his car on the door of Palamas. And just prevent him from moving up the track on exit and prevent his drive off. But he's really just mirroring the line that Palamas is running. And one thing I'm noticing is lap by lap, these two drivers here with Eckrich being kind of held up by Palamas, this is allowing Krobach and Yazik to close the gap. It's ever so slowly, but Krobach and Yazik are both beating both of these drivers by a tenth to a tenth and a half per lap. And if they can stretch that to more like a tenth and a half per lap, they possibly can catch these two leaders before the race is done.
Boy, that time off at turn 2, Scott Eckrich got a really good run coming off the corner, put too much throttle down, just got a little bit sideways, lost most of that momentum, JR, so he's forced to tuck back in behind Barrett Palamas. And talk about just how maddening that is to know that you got a better run and then just got a little bit too much out of it. You're kind of just, kicking yourself.
It's really tough to keep yourself under control, for lack of a better term. You can get the run, but as you're getting that run, you want just a little bit extra to make sure you get to the inside of the guy up off the corner. As you give that little bit extra throttle to the rear tires, the car starts to get twitchy, starts to lose grip, and ultimately you have to back off in order to keep the car underneath you. It's very, very difficult to keep yourself under control and continue to do what is working. Because you're chasing that rabbit right out in front of you, so it's very easy to step over your bounds. The bad thing for Scott, we see him get a run here up off of turn 1, but he's not able to carry it. He's just getting to the inside of Jonathan Cogswell, lost time because of that. The bad thing for Scott is that as he has this run, he's having to turn the wheel more to the left in order to keep it lower up off of the corner. Barrett doing a good job of holding that lower line, and that's making Scott turn the wheel more and more. And as he does that, that's going to give him more and more wheel spin under throttle.
I'll tell you what really didn't help Scott that last time coming off of turn 2. He had Jonathan Cogswell up on his outside, so he couldn't possibly open up the wheel as much as he wanted to. Certainly not as much as his competitor right now for the lead, Barrett Palamas did. You can see another shot there going down the backstretch into turns 3 and 4.
And he's getting, he went in the middle lane through 3 here. He's trying to get a huge run up off of turn 4, but he's not making that pass. He's going to continue to push Barrett down the front straightaway here. And then look at that, Barrett takes a larger arc into the corner, kind of messed up what Scott was planning on doing.
Kenny, you talk about what is something you can do, if you, whoa, look at that big wiggle there from Palamas. That for Scott Eckrich to check up. I'm sure Scott's got to be kicking himself. If he could have just kept his foot planted, Kenny, he probably would have had him done and dusted as they head to turn 3 and 4.
Yeah, Palamas has been getting looser and looser in turn 2, lap by lap, so it's becoming an issue for sure, tire wear for that leader. But Krobach is now actually in the picture. You see that black Ford in back there. He is actually really caught up to these leaders, and he's actually left Yazik in the dust. He's now a second behind Krobach, and you see actually up front the leaders getting around Jacob Bruff now down the backstretch. But I would call Krobach definitely in the picture now with 20 laps to go. Plenty of time with the 72 machine to make some hay. But yeah, the loose condition for Palamas just keeps getting worse and worse. And Eckrich kind of just trying to figure out a way to get around safely and efficiently, but it might be kind of costing him here, being almost, in a way, almost too calculating.
Boy, I tell you, the 7 car at Jacob Ruff really cost Michael Krobach there, probably if not an entire year off his life with the stress he had to kind of just jerk that car back down to the inside. Also really hurt his momentum coming up onto the front stretch.
Yeah, definitely. As the laps count down, we're getting down to about 16 to go here. Anytime you catch a lap car, it is just frustrating as a driver. Even if that lap car, he's running his own race, he's not necessarily in the way, but just because he's there on the track, it causes you to lose focus or lose where your bearings are. And especially if you're racing the guy in front of you, if you come up off the corner and the guy ahead is able to clear him and you're not, it can cost you so much time. It's very frustrating, but it's just something you have to deal with. We're watching a replay here. It looks like, I believe that's Jacob Ruff that kind of did some agricultural driving there.
Yeah, got a little bit loose there on the apron trying to come down pit road. The 7 machine goes for just a little bit of an adventure. Does a phenomenal job to save the car, not bring out the caution. We're still green here, just inside of about 15 laps to go. Up front, it's still the 79 car. Barrett Palamas just behind him, though he's got the Season 1 champion of Scott Eckridge, and just behind those 2 drivers is last week's winner, Michael Krobach in the 72.
Yeah, and I think more than anything, Scott's just trying to push Barrett here just a little bit, hopefully wanting Barrett to overdrive one of these corners, and then he's just going to slip on by. But if he's got anything left in the tank here, he needs to be using it because, like you said, Michael Krobach is catching them, and Michael Krobach has been very dedicated to the bottom of the track. And as we said that, here goes Scott to the high side through turns 1 and 2.
Yeah, Scott Eckridge in the 70 car doing exactly what the name of the race implies. He goes high, wide, and handsome in turns 1 and 2. Gets a huge run down the back stretch. We'll see what he does with this momentum. He's going to make a look down to the inside. This is where Scott wants to be. He wants to be down here on the inside, and up all the way on the outside is where Barrett Palamas was forced to go. Scott looks like he's going to try pull a slider line coming off of turn 4. He's going to have the lead easily this time by the stripe.
Huge move there by Scott Eckridge, getting that huge run, not overdriving the entry into turn 3, being able to make that pass up off of turn 4. He's going to move around a little bit right now just to make sure he contains that lead coming off of turn 2.
Yeah, interesting enough, though, too, Kenny. Instead of this time in turns 1 and 2, now that he has all the clean air in the world on his nose, he doesn't choose to kind of wrap that white line. He's wrapping that first seam on the track in turns 1 and 2. He's doing just about the same thing in 3 and 4, but kind of arcing it as the corner goes on.
Yeah, I mean, he might be doing a kind of a tactic where he's maybe kind of trying to block 1 to 2 lanes for Barrett and forcing him to really push the issue and go way up off the track. Ooh, and we have a late caution, and that's going to change everything.
Caution out on the Speedway. We'll see if we can't get a replay here to see the cause for caution. This is going to bring out the yellow flag here. We should go back to green flag racing with about 7 or 8 laps to go. And, oh, man, Jacob Ruff getting pretty loose, gets collected there by the 40 car of Pete Baskins.
Yeah, he looks like Ruff got really loose off of turn 2, smacked the outside wall, and Baskins was just kind of going full bore and ran to the back of him as Ruff came back across the track. And this is going to be really interesting because all drivers are definitely going to pit here, and we're going to have a sprint to the end. And JR, I got kind of 2 questions for you. First, it's a little bit frustrating when, lap down cars end up kind of altering the end of this race when you have a really kind of a green racetrack. So your thoughts on that? And then also here, long run drivers in Eckridge and Krobach, they're up towards the front, but now they have to kind of completely flip their mentality and drive a sprint to the end, which they really have not had to do that thus far.
Yeah, absolutely frustrating when you have a late caution when you're somebody like Scott Eckridge or even Krobach that was closing in on second place there. The race was kind of playing out the way you wanted it to. So frustrating when that changes everything. It's an additional frustration when you realize that you have been one of the long run drivers on speed and not one of the short run speed drivers. Who this does help, in my opinion, is Brian Yazik, who is racing for that championship. He has pushed his car early in some of the runs. He knows what to expect, and I think he's going to go after it really hard when we go green here, guys.
Pretty much everybody in the field taking a 4-tire pit stop. We're going to have to keep all our eyes here on the leaders. It looks like Scott Eckridge is going to continue to hold the lead here. And, oh, look at Michael Krobach in the 72 car. He's going to gain a spot. And, oh, man, cars are getting all sorts of squeezed together as they come off of pit road.
Thomas George actually ends up leapfrogging Yazik there, so a good pit stop for the 6 bunch. And I think another driver that this helps, JR, I think this helps Barrett Palamas, because he was playing defense. He just pretty much lost the race there at the end, and now he has a newfound life, a new chance here to go at it, and he's been really good on the short runs, so I think he would be a driver to watch on this restart.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that too, Kenny. He's been up front a lot in the early going, so he knows what to expect as well. Has had tons of speed, so definitely his job on this restart is going to be to keep it as close as he can with Scott Eckridge, so he's side by side as they go off into 1 and 2.
We're going to take a quick break here. Why don't you go to the fridge, grab something to drink, maybe a snack. We're going to be right back here after this quick break.
This is iRacing, the world's premier online racing game. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat to experience today's newest form of competitive motorsport, virtual racing, all from your home PC. Race virtually in indoor series from NASCAR, IndyCar, IMSA, the World of Outlaws, Aussie Supercars and more. Take on legendary circuits like Daytona, Silverstone and the Nürburgring. Join iRacing's global online racing community and get on track today at iRacing.com.
Back here for the High, Wide, and Handsome 200 presented by the Joy of Driving Homestead Miami Speedway. Of course, if you're looking for any entertaining sim racing content outside of what we put on here on the Virtual Grip Network, you can always go check out the Joy of Driving on YouTube. You can follow along Mark Cohn's escapades as he battles for wins and avoids wrecks with his cat-like reflexes, all while providing commentary sure to make you laugh, cry, or both. You can follow along, subscribe to his YouTube channel, The Joy of Driving on YouTube, or look up his Facebook page at facebook.com/The Joy of Driving channel. Guys, we're here on lap 127, right across the stripe to start 128 out of 134. We've had about 4 cautions on the day, just came down pit road to get 4 fresh feel goods. It's going to be a mad dash to the end.
Yeah, it absolutely is, Austin. And the interesting thing here, the control car, Scott Eckridge, is taking the outside line. One reason for doing that is that prevents Barrett Palamas, one of the fast cars on the short run, from being right behind you. That's going to hold him up slightly and allow Scott to hopefully get away here.
iRacing pace car makes a hard left turn down pit road. Scott Eckridge makes a huge start. As soon as they get through the Geico restart zone, puts his foot on the loud pedal. He's got a huge jump over the rest of the field. These guys are going to absolutely swamp Michael Krobach down on the bottom. You see Thomas George now fighting 3 wide with Brian Yazik as Barrett Palamas falls back just a little bit in the sucker hole. Look at Woody Mahan trying to take evasive action.
Absolutely. Everybody's going as hard as they can right now. It's going to be very tricky. The tire pressure's being low, tire temperature's being low. They're going to have to hold on to it for a couple of laps, but everybody pushing as hard as they possibly can at the moment.
Hay window is open. They're getting pretty close here. They're going to get about 6 laps to go. This time by here, time is ticking if you want to get those oh-so-crucial points in the championship. If you're guys like Brian Yazik, Thomas George, or Michael Krobach, and up at the front of the field, it's still Scott Eckridge to the 70 machine. Look at these 2 guys side by side as they come off of turn 2. It's a drag race.
Absolutely, and Brian Yazik is going to race Thomas George hard, especially after last week. He's going to be as clean as he can about it, but he's definitely going to race him hard and try to get that position or even put him in a bad place. We see Thomas George get really close to the wall off of turn 4.
Brian Yazik, he has taken no prisoners this time by. He cleared himself all the way up in front of the 6 car Thomas George. It wasn't dirty by any means, but he certainly didn't leave himself a whole lot of space at the front of the field. Michael Krobach continues to get closer and closer to the 70 car, Scott Eckridge.
Absolutely. This could be a really good finish in the closing laps here. We still got about 4 to go, but Michael Krobach is able to keep it right there. But through 3 and 4 that time, Yazik made up a lot of distance on the leaders.
Side by side as they go down the front stretch. This time by it's still Scott Eckrich who leads this next lap. That's Scott Eckrich on the outside, Michael Krobach down on the inside. These guys are teammates on and off the track. Michael Krobach is still in it for a championship. He's racing for a lot here. Scott Eckrich, he talked about in the driver chat, not making any hot lap attempts. He falls back 1 more position, gives Michael Krobach the lead. Krobach's trying to go back to back.
Yeah, Krobach with the win last week. Like we said, he ran that Endurance League race here earlier in the month. He knows how to get it done on the short run, even though he's not done it so far today, and he's putting it to good use.
Scott Eckrich slots in behind him. You've got Brian Yazik. He's the 3rd car right here trying to make himself another podium position. Thomas George doing everything he can to hold on to that 4th spot, not lose too many points here to championship competitor Brian Yazik. Looks like Woody Mahan in this fight as well. You can see 3 cars right now battling for the 4th spot.
Yeah, George not in a great position right now. He's got
Paul side by side for the lead. Mike Rasmus almost up in the wall, but that time in 3 and 4, Michael Krobach and Scott Eckrich both wiggling quite a bit.
Yeah, and Yazik's licking his chops right now. He just wants to make sure he's in the lane that either goes or he's in the opening that opens up when these two get together. So he's trying to get everything he can. Obviously needs this win really bad.
Eckrich threw a huge slide job there going, whoa, 1 car hard off the outside wall. That's Woody Mahan. He does a phenomenal job to save it. The cameras now switch back to the front of the field. Scott Eckrich still in 1st position. Michael Krobach in 2nd. Brian Yazik rounds out the podium positions.
Yeah.
Guys, I've noticed that Krobach particularly has been much better than Eckrich in 3 and 4. We'll see if that comes into play here on the final lap.
White flag in the air. This is the last time in turns 1 and 2. Michael Krobach goes all the way down to the bottom of the track, tries to straighten out the backstretch, get all the momentum he can. Right now it looks like it won't be enough, JR. He's going to have to do something magical in turns 3 and 4.
Yeah, he tries to do a fake down to the inside of turn 3. It did not fool Scott. He goes in the middle lane. That took the air off of Krobach, but Krobach's got a ton of steam coming here on the bottom off of turn 4.
Going to be a drag race to the line. It looks like, though, Scott Eckrich is going to take the victory here at Homestead Miami Speedway for the High, Wide, and Handsome, presented by The Joy of Driving. Man, what a race. We are going to take a quick break. We're going to let iRacing timing and scoring do its thing, and then we're going to come back to talk to our podium finishers, go through the entire finishing order, and then wrap up the show with their closing thoughts. We'll be right back.
J.R. Shepard dives down to the inside, trying to see if he's able to get a little bit of that tack that Brandon Proudfoot has been getting up at the front of the field. 10 laps to go here at Port Royal.
Yeah, definitely not making a huge ground here on Brian. Brian's able to maintain that gap.
It's big Justin Morton back into 2nd with J.R. Shepard somehow taking over the lead. I have no idea.
These guys, you see Scott kind of using up all that momentum. Got to enter the corner wide. I expected him to kind of cut back low. See lap car down on the inside. George overshoots the corner. Scott puts that car just where he needs to on the middle. It's going to be a drag race through the kink. Thomas George gets loose. Scott Eckrich has the opportunity to come home with a win right now. Side-by-side drag race.
Oh, wow.
Scott Eckrich, 5/1000ths of a second. Welcome back to the High, Wide, and Handsome 200 presented by The Joy of Driving. We're here live from Homestead Miami Speedway. You're watching the Virtual Group Network. Scott Eckrich just took home the checkered flag here at Homestead, just barely eking out a win over teammate Michael Krobach. Brian Yazik gained some crucial points in the fight for the championship, rounding out the podium. Unfortunately, though, for the 55 of Yazik, his championship rival, Thomas George, finishes 1 spot behind, so not a whole lot of difference in the points earnings for those 2 drivers. Newcomer to the league, Barrett Palamas, rounds out the top 5. Mr. Consistency falls a little bit flat of what we're used to him doing. He shows up, he gets a podium. That's been usually typically what happens. Tonight, he comes home in the 6th position. Isaiah Dupre comes home in 7th, followed by old DRJ. Snoop Doggy Don Runkle Jr. in 8th position. Rich Jetty comes home in 9th with Woody Mahan rounding out the top 10. JR.
Coming home in 11th place tonight, we have Jonathan Cogswell in the 28 car. Alongside him and those great paint schemes, John Wilco driving the 62 will finish in 12th. We go back to our lap down car starting in 13th. 3 laps down was Brady Cure. 14th place, Matthew Wheeler tonight. Finishing in 15th was Pete Baskins. 16th was Jacob Bruff, who we saw go for a wild ride toward the end of the race there, bringing out that last caution. 17th place, running up front early, was James Moore. 18th is Jordan Harnish. Finishing in 19th place tonight is Christopher DeWald. And finishing in 20th, about 111 laps down, is Greg O'Berry.
Thanks, JR. We're standing by now with our big winner tonight, Scott Eckridge. Scott, you started out in the back of the field. You go from worst to first here again at Homestead Miami Speedway this year. Scott, we saw you in the closing laps. You were all over the rear end of Barrett Palamas there. Were you just waiting for him to make a mistake or just biding your time?
Well, I noticed in the last few runs, if you tried passing the guy that was in front without the dirty air in your nose, you would get considerably looser. So I thought that'd be kind of a double-edged sword there. I could just get in his mirror there, apply a little bit of that L2 button and, also save the rear tire at the same time until, it was more of an appropriate time to go.
Scott, what was going through your mind as soon as that caution flew with about 10 laps to go?
Well, yeah, you never like to see that, especially after, such a long green flag run. I was kind of concerned. I ran a couple fast laps for practice, but really didn't practice running fast. And it took me a few laps there towards the end to kind of figure it out. So, yeah, it's never fun when a giant saving race turns into a hot lapper because you just, you got to find the edge immediately or you're going to lose.
Well, luckily, Scott, you were able to find the edge before too long. Who do you have to thank for bringing home the checkered flag tonight?
As always, LPM, all the drivers here at PGRL, you guys up in the booth for putting on this broadcast we can watch every week. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Scott. Once again, congratulations on the victory.
Thank you.
That was Scott Eckridge, tonight's winner. Usually I'd hand it off to J.R. Shepard to talk to the driver that finishes in second place. However, because it's Kenny's best buddy, Michael Krobach, he's going to take it from here.
Yep, I got Michael Krobach down here in the pits with me. And Michael, apparently Scott could let you win once, but not twice in a row. Is that the case?
Yeah, sounds about right. I threw everything I had at him there at that last run. Just trying to park the entry of the corner and watch him drive it in deep and try to get a good run off, and cleared him that one time, and I thought, okay, maybe we had a shot here, but the number 70 there was pretty strong, and he got back by me, and on the last lap, I had to make a decision about what to do in 3 and 4, and I kind of tried to fake low, and then went high, parked the apex again, and then tried to get a good run off, and thought for a split second about the video game move of banging fenders coming off of turn 4 and doing an old Darlington finish at Homestead, but want to race clean and just try to power back to the throttle and side draft a little bit, but came up about 500s too short.
That's interesting you talk about mirror driving. Is that once you got around Scott, you didn't really pay attention out front anymore, so we're just trying to take his line away?
Yeah, I was mostly focused out front, but just kind of being aware of my peripheral vision and just where he was putting the car, and I kind of wanted to stop him from getting a good line into the corner, and then when I was behind him, I was just kind of trying to do the exact opposite of what he was doing. So he was throwing it in deep, and when he was doing that, I was just backing way out to try to power off the corner, and I don't know if we had a couple more laps, maybe we could have got there. He was better than me on the long run for sure. But I thought we could keep pace a little bit there. Definitely a big improvement from the start of the year because we were nowhere near the 70 space. So I'm just happy to be running up front and fighting him for wins every week. It's a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, that kind of leads me into my next question. What's the story with this season? I mean, not to say you were terrible last season, but this season's just been you've been pretty much on fire, really consistent, getting a win in there. What's been the difference for you?
Danny, we were junk season 1 and 2. You can say it. We were terrible season 1 and 2. Lately, a couple things. So definitely the new rig, new computer, same wheel and pedals and all that, but a new computer. So smooth as silk. We can run hard, great frames. know where the car is at all times. Don't have to worry about that. Don't have to worry about wrecking anybody. I can just make moves and be confident that they'll work. So that's a big one. And the second one is our schedule worked out a little bit so we can run a bit more practice during the week. So again, like I said last week, all of those open races, we put in 665 miles this week at Las Vegas in open setup races mostly. Didn't want to run 666 because, Satan, but kept it at 665 and got to get all that practice in and know what the car is going to do in the long run. I think, my strength there at the beginning was just knowing that you have to hug the white line and keep that left front tire right on that white line, not get the right rear upset by that seam, and that would keep the tires under you. So I think people started to figure that out as the run went on, and so my advantage kind of went away a little bit there. But just keeping those tires under you is so important on this car now, and I think that plays to the strength of the 72 team.
So basically what you're saying is no more excuses for losing 90% of these races.
Yeah, absolutely not. We gotta dominate the Krobach versus Crow show. I know Vincent Crow's not here right now, but we just gotta perform well and be one of the top LPM cars. It's pretty embarrassing getting your butt kicked week in and week out by all your teammates. So we just had to step up the game. I think we did, and I think we can fight for wins on a at least semi-weekly basis. I think we'll be probably junk at Martinsville next week, but we'll put in a lot of practice and see if we can get top 5 speed.
Well, hey, somebody's got to be the Casey Mears of Hendrick Motorsports, so that might as well be you, right? So who do you got to thank, though, for your silver medal tonight?
Yeah, got to thank Virtual Grip Network for putting on great broadcasts. I got to thank Elite Performance Industries for the open setups that are so fun to run in the whole community over there. MC Squared Editing Services, Clipping That Apex, Carolina Sim Shop, Thumbs Up Cancer Down, Mahan Speed Laboratories, our race sponsor tonight, The Joy of Driving, Fleximation Systems, Host Venom, Sim Racing Apps, HPP Simulation, and Graphics Esports for painting my cars. And you, Kenny, you drive me to perform well, to get on the podium every week, so I can have a chance to talk to you. So you fuel me up, and I'm going to be back here getting an interview by Kenny Kibian again in a couple weeks.
Sounds good. I look forward to it. We'll see you, Michael.
Thanks, brother.
That was Michael Krobach's second place finisher tonight, and I believe J.R. Shepard is caught up with third place, Brian Yazik.
Indeed, I have. Brian, hey, congratulations on a podium finish here tonight. Talk us through your race early. We saw you get out there and capture the lead in that first stint. Was that kind of the plan going in? Try to get up there and get bonus points, or was your car just working a little bit better than everybody else?
Let's say 70-30. That was pretty much the plan. Yeah, tried to at least get up there and get a point for a lap led, because I know Thomas was kind of stuck at the back there for a while, so I figured that might be a shot at it. And I thought maybe if I could get up there and lead the most laps, that would help, because I know those guys coming from the back will be in contention for the bonus point for the hard charger. So to try to kind of think points-wise how to maximize my night. We just didn't have, I could either be there at the front side of the run, or I could try to be there at the back side of the run. I didn't really have too much else for getting it out into the wind sort of speed.
Yeah, absolutely. We saw you have speed early in the run, and then we saw you kind of fall off through the middle, probably taking care of your tires a little bit, but definitely coming on strong toward the end of a long run as well. Tell us what was going through your mind as that last caution came out, knowing that it was going to be a little bit of a shootout there.
I was just hoping for it to run green. I mean, more often than not, I end up on the bad side of those late race shenanigans, but we ended up all right this time. Made a spot up on that one, so that helped. I thought maybe if Mike and Scott got into it, we could have a shot at it, but it just didn't work out. But we'll take third and keep trucking on down the road. I gained a point on Thomas, and I think I lost some to Mike. So we'll have to see how that comes out in the wash here over these next 2 weeks.
Yeah, definitely going to continue to be a close points battle. I know you have a little bit of ground to make up, but definitely closed up on the lead there tonight by at least a few points. So talk us about how you're feeling about next week going to Martinsville.
Not good. I'll be honest. We didn't run well there in the spring, and Martinsville and I haven't really gotten along. I haven't figured out a way to get around there too good yet, so we're just we were hoping to have a little bit more of a buffer heading into Martinsville, but things are what they are, so we'll attack it next week and make the best of the situation, see what we can't get out of it.
Absolutely, and the one thing about Martinsville is that anything can happen. Don't necessarily have to be the fastest car to get a good finish there. So definitely look forward to that race next week. But Brian, congratulations again on your third place run. Before we let you go, who do you want to thank for tonight's run?
Shout out to you guys for broadcasting our crazy selves running around out here, and it's all the usual people that help us out at LPM, sim racing apps. Jeff Gilliam software is absolutely crucial to my nightly races. Yaza Sandwiches, unfortunately, we're closed, but hey, we're just building hype for the summer. MC Squared Editing Services. It's obviously my buddy Mike up there. I'm sure I'm forgetting a lot of people, but hey, Clipping That Apex too. If you want some unique wall art, go check them out, clippingthatapex.com.
Absolutely, Brian. Hey, congratulations on that third place run, and hopefully we'll be talking to you again next week.
Let's hope so. That means I did something right.
That's right. Look forward to it, man.
Yep.
We'd like to thank all three of our podium finishers once again for taking the opportunity to talk to us. We'd also like to thank our sponsor for tonight's race, of course, that being Mark Cohn and his YouTube and Facebook page, The Joy of Driving. You can subscribe to him on YouTube, just The Joy of Driving, or look up his Facebook page at facebook.com/The Joy of Driving channel. Obviously, Mark is just a funny guy. Mainstay in the Pretty Good Racing League, so definitely do look him up. Sure, always to make you laugh, cry, or both. So he does a really good job to make sure you're entertained. But guys, tonight's race was just phenomenal. We had lots of side-by-side racing. There was tons of battles all night, and boy, it really came down to the wire.
Absolutely did, Austin, and we continue to see great racing from our three championship leaders. They're always up front. Obviously, Scott is one of the guys that continues to have speed. He's out of the championship at the moment for sure, probably not anywhere near after the two drop weeks as well. He's out here just trying to get wins and has the speed to continue to do that. But our three championship leaders, Krobach, Yazik, George, finishing second through fourth place tonight. Those guys are always close together. Ultimately, even though we saw different guys up front throughout this race, at the end of the night, it was those three guys finishing together once again.
And next, Martinsville is looming. And last time that the PGRL went to Martinsville back in the springtime, 28 cautions, lots of attrition. It was a survival race, but a survival race that was won by Thomas George, our championship leader. So he's got to be feeling pretty decent going into there, but really that's a scary racetrack for everybody knowing that track's passed.
Always so hard to pass at Martinsville. As you guys mentioned it, Kenny, the next PGRL race is broadcast next Tuesday, November 1st at Martinsville Speedway. That stream goes live at 8:50 p.m. Eastern Time. The next broadcast here on the Virtual Group Network is the BRL's Dirt Street Stock Series as they take on Lucas Oil Speedway Friday, October 28th. That stream goes live at 7:10 p.m. Eastern Time. This has been a pretty good production of the Virtual Group Network. On behalf of myself, Austin Belkey, my booth mates J.R. Shepard and Kenny Kibbe, our director Ryan Seneker, and everyone else behind the scenes at the Virtual Group Network, thank you so much for watching, and good night.